Good morning, everyone. Now, let us go into our meditation. Seated comfortably, coming into a posture suitable for meditation. Taking a deep breath in, breathing out, relaxing, gently, slowly, stilling the mind, being present within the now, being aware of the posture of the body. As you take a deep breath in, breathing out, relaxing deeper and deeper. Gently taking a deep breath in again. Breathing out. Coming into the present moment. Putting aside the past and the future. And finding tranquil bliss within the present. Observing the breath. Observing the breath. Engaging with the physical and mental sankharas. Knowing of the existence of cause and effect within ourselves, in the houses and abodes that we reside, outside in the cities, the countries, the world, the universe. Fragments of instances supporting the arising of other instances. Similarly, observe the cause and effect of the breath, taking away the attribute of self. And simply observing the breath, the motion, of the breath at the tip of the nostrils, the abdomen, and slowly making its way all across the body. The mind, the power of the mind transcends the power of the body. And you will see that when the mind is instilled with calm and tranquility, being within the present, supported by samadhi, whatever the body might be going through in terms of pain or pleasure, comfort or discomfort, all of that is surpassed, transcended by the tranquil state of mind. So do not be afraid. Allow the mind to go deeper and deeper into the present, observing what is of now with the breath, with the breath, with the breath. Observe, observe. Observe. Seeing the newness present in every moment. When the mind separates its dependence upon the past and the future, you will arouse a sense of a childlike mind and inquisitiveness connected to the present. Boredom will no longer exist. The monotonous nature that you might feel exists will disappear. Simply find balance and warmth in the present. Engage with all phenomena through being in the position of the present. Observe. Observe. Gently guiding your attention to now recollect the aspects of the meditation practice. Observe, observe. Gently taking a deep breath in, letting go of the breath, relaxing the mind and the body. Becoming aware of your surroundings as you take another deep breath in, breathing out, relax, relax, relax. Gently, slowly. Taking another deep breath in, being aware of your posture, letting go of the breath, and then you're ready. Awakening into the present. Sadhu. 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 All right. Now, we have to go over the third Vipassana Ñāna today, which is the Sammasana Ñāna. Now, Sammasana Ñāna, together with the earlier Ñāna, the Paccaya Pariggaha Ñāna, falls under the Kankha Vitarana Vishuddhi, which is the purification by overcoming of doubt. Now, it is also interesting when we sort of refer to the Sapta Vishuddhi, we find that the purification of view, Ditti Vishuddhi, came through the instilling of Nama-Rupa Paricheda Ñāna. Nama-Rupa Paricheda Ñāna. Knowing distinctly the difference or through differentiation, Nama and Rupa. And then Paccaya Pariggaha Ñāna arose afterwards, which would then fall under the purification by overcoming doubt, Kankha Vitarana Vishuddhi. Now, that flow that we then see, it gives us a sense of, okay, view was purified in this manner. Now, to further purify the mind, we come into overcoming any sort of fragments of doubt or anything that can create doubt through Paccaya Pariggaha Ñāna, Sammasana Ñāna, and the third Ñāna that we will be doing next week is the Udayabbaya Ñāna, the knowledge of the arising and passing away. Right? So today, Sammasana Ñāna. What is Sammasana Ñāna? Sammasana Ñāna is commonly translated as the knowledge of comprehension. Comprehension. The knowledge of comprehension comes to be or arises in, as all Vipassana Ñānas do, gently with fragments of insight, slowly maturing into a state which is more powerful. So it will always start weak and it will mature into a state that is powerful. Here, comprehension refers to the object that is perceived during meditation, whatever sankhara. Initially, because if we are doing or if we are practicing breathing meditation, the object would now be, of course, breathing. We relate or we come to observe, comprehend the distinct processes that come about or plays out, as opposed to what we initially saw, for example, the breath as. Initially, when we observed the breath, there was a sense of self in the breath, which was knowing, okay, this is the breath. The breath can be divided into three parts: the arising, the processing, and the passing away, all built upon the instigations of self, right? A sense of being given into, a sense of life given into the breath. Through the maturation of Sammasana Ñāna, we come to realize the fact that the breath is a composition of these times, the arising, the possessing, the passing away. And based upon that experience, the Sammasana Ñāna continues to grow, where now we will, any sort of object that we take will be analyzed through the scope which was now also established in the earlier jnana, but matures to realize a sense of non-self in all those processes. To realize a sense of mechanism which plays itself out, which early was perceived as an action, a motion with a sense of self, but now becomes far more mechanical and sort of drawn away and apart from that self which initially existed. So Sammasana Ñāna is the comprehension of the object in its most realistic present moment. Do you understand? Right. When Sammasana Ñāna then continues this sense of, this process has a part where it arises. It stays on for this amount of time and then it fades away. That would be Sammasana Ñāna. When the knowledge matures, that Sammasana Ñāna starts applying itself almost, it will always be unprompted. It will arise towards each and every sankhara that we might experience through our meditation. From the pleasant, the painful, to the indeterminate, we will have Sammasana now coming in by way of comprehension to realize that it is impermanent, that it leads to suffering, that it goes into or has the intrinsic quality of it being non-self or devoid of a self. Do you understand? Does that make sense? Right. When Sammasana Ñāna then matures on, with every step that we take, with every breath that we take, with the mind that arises, with mental objects and physical objects, we notice that it flows from one distinct time to another, which is talking about Uppada, Titi, Bhanga, the arising, the possessing, and the passing away. It becomes or is seen, the phenomena begins to be seen as a very impersonal phenomena. Without, this is the most important part, an impersonal phenomena without a master. Do you understand? Earlier, with any sense of pain, pleasure, breath, we had a master. We had a person, sort of an instigation, that a person was behind the steering wheel, driving this experience, feeling this experience, knowing this experience. But at this level, as it matures, what we come to realize is that there is no master, that it is simply an impersonal phenomena without a master. Does that make sense? Right. Now, as we then, that gives us a sense of the attitude that one must have in approaching Vipassana, which is knowing all of the things that we do know at that point in time, we should never try to impose this. It should always be allowed for it to arise on its own. For it to arise on its own, even with the sense of, for example, when we use the word anicca, we will have a lot of data, a lot of means to then sort of relate, to define, to distinctively understand anicca. Right? Because we've learned, right? And then we apply. However, when we approach the Vipassana, we must always make sure that we are not applying any of that. Applying any of that. Whatever should be applied, if we might take it as a boat on a river, the boat was put onto the river at the time of Nama Rupa Paricheda Ñāna. You have nothing more to do. Simply only to observe. Simply only to observe. And when you do, at a time when you find that balance of mind where none of these past elements comes into sort of conditioning you at the present, at that moment you realize all of these sankharas that arise, the mind observing the object, first we saw the breath. We saw the arising, the processing, the passing away of the breath. Slowly the breath disappeared. All of these parts are part of Sammasana Ñāna. When the breath then disappears, we will also come to understand as the breath disappears from one part, it establishes, the mind. As the mind frees itself from one part, it goes into another. Remember, in the Chittiviti processes, the arising of a Panchadwara Bhajana Viti meant the disassociation from the mind object. What was the mind object? The Bhavanga. The disassociation from the Panchadwara Bhajana Viti meant the returning to Bhavanga. The mind will always find itself in a position of change, in a position of movement, in a position of grasping of object. We must never delude ourselves to imagine now that one thing has disappeared, now nothing exists. Now that is a mind which draws parallels to Vipassana Upaklesha. Because now what happens? The breath has disappeared. And of course, it's a new experience. So we feel quite excited by the fact that the breath has disappeared, or the body has disappeared, or the sensations have disappeared. And these are all very pleasurable, sort of awing experiences. However, the pleasure we cling on to. The pleasure is a Vipassana Upaklesha. The state we cling on to, which becomes a Vipassana Upaklesha. So what do? We choose, or through that understanding, we will know the mind will always, at one part, when something arises, it disassociates from a previous state. But this state, which is current, will also come to be disassociated, or will come into a moment of demise. Yes, does that make sense? That is Sammasana Ñāna. The realization that all sankharas that arise comes into a position of arising, possessing, and passing away. This will also then relate to, it will start with the present breath, the present feelings, pleasure, pain, upekha, all of this. the state of mind. It will then spread to past, future, right? So all of those things, remember, when you meditate, of course, it is almost very natural that a past sort of memory comes up, or a future sort of something that you need or want or hope comes up, right? The Sammasana Ñāna, when it matures and as it matures, it will spread. It will spread to now understand that whatever is of the past, the present, the future will all go through its past of arising, possessing, passing away. And all of this will happen as nature, not driven by a master. Do you understand? Does that make sense? Right? That is Sammasana Ñāna. That is Sammasana Ñāna. Right? Through this Sammasana Ñāna, when we see impermanence, when we see suffering, when we see non-self, remember that this means that it is simply noticing, and it is not about reflection and reasoning. Do you understand? Noticing, not reflection, and not sort of perceiving it, and what is this, how is this, all of these things. Because the moment you bring out that sense of trying to sort of pull it apart with your sort of mundane hands, if I may, soiled hands, if I may use that sort of sense of example, it's going to now taint the Vipassana. So what we simply do is notice, 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 notice within the present. That's it. Do you understand? Does that make sense? Does anyone have a question? Now, when we notice, it lays the perfect foundation, of course, for the good, which is Vipassana, which could arise, but it also lays some traps, some sort of landmines in a way. These landmines are the Vipassana Upakleshas. So during the time of Sammasana Ñāna, it is very, very possible, that a person who is experiencing this sort of impermanent suffering non-self, will now experience nimittas, pleasure, pain, light, any of the Vipassana Upakleshas. And what happens? Clinging. Things that sort of take the mind, things that sort of, like swinging a piece of candy in front of a child almost, right? Taking your sort of concentration away from this aspect of noticing, now taking it into entanglement. That is a very common danger faced by people going through the weaker stages, the middle stages of Sammasana Ñāna. So that is something to caution yourself with, right? To caution yourself with. Yeah. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Shyami?
Bhante, what I experienced was I had this moment, I saw the mechanism rising and falling and rising and falling. And then suddenly that made me, I went on in the same, seeing it, the difference, the body and the breath. What is this? What is body? What is breath? That sort of feeling. And then suddenly it took me, it's the breath, the air element in the body. It's part of the body. And the body is made with these 4 elements. This is you have no control. The body needs to sustain, this breath needs the body to sustain. And then suddenly I was in a quite a bit of a liberated sort of moment, that moment. And the whole body and mind was in one point, one place.
Sure.
And is that correct?
Right. So this has to be answered through last week's Ñāna, right? Now, when we use communication, or we might use communication with ourselves in Vipassana Ñāna, or rather sort of during meditation, to sort of prompt us into or back to, or to give us a sense of control over the meditation object. This is something that we do, right? So even if you're sort of feeling a bit lazy, if we have a sense of boredom, or we are not, we use a bit of communication to sort of bring ourselves back to the object, to motivate ourselves, to empower ourselves, and to sort of go into a deeper sense of effort with regards to the observation of the object. We do this. However, when we do this, the mind might arouse a sense of energy and then go back into the object, right? Yeah. It's like, for example, I don't know how to sort of do something around the house. I check a YouTube video. I take a look at a YouTube example, a video of a person doing it on YouTube. And then, okay, now I know how to do it. And now I'll go back to doing it. The problem is that I take that whole instance. First, I didn't know how to do it. I checked a YouTube video, and then I went back to doing it. These are three different mentalities, mental positions. Seeing three different mental positions as a collective is not exactly accurate, which we then discussed last week, or the week before. Maybe we did last week, I think, isn't it? Right? Last week, we discussed it last week, which is the clear differentiation between cause and effect, Paccaya Pariggaha Ñāna. Do you understand? Right? That is one. So when it comes to that communication is done at a position where our samadhi or the factors might be a little bit weaker. Then we instigate and arouse a sense of motivation and energy, and then go into the samadhi or the position. Remember that process of instigating or arousing motivation and energy is different from that moment of samadhi. Do not connect the two. Because if you connect the two, you will not be able to go here without going here. And going to that first position means that you will remain in the weakness. Or remain not in the weakness, the weak position. Do you understand? Right? It is almost as if you were to depend on my sort of guided meditation to go into samadhi. So what will then happen is, without being guided, you might not be able to go into samadhi. Because we connect. So, Shriyani, have I answered your question then?
So that means when I come to that state, realizing this is a mechanism, do not go into element state.
Do not go into anything other than noticing.
Okay.
Right? Maybe now, if we are to journey on a river, right? No one would sort of, cross into the bank, remove the boat from the river, go into another river adjacent, and then put the boat back into that river. Right? There is no need to do that. We tread on this river. Right? So if the boat and the current is taking you, it will take you. Right? Do not do anything other than simply noticing. Implied, anything that is implied distracts Vipassana. Right? Anything that is implied distracts the Vipassana. Right? So if we go into what the Vipassana upakleshas are, the first, obhasa, illumination, right? This is a manifestation of light. Then we have the 5 types of priti, kuddaka priti, kanika priti, okantika priti, ubbenka priti, and parana priti, right? Then we have passaddhi, sukha, shraddha, paggaha. Paggaha means the exertion or strenuousness that we bring in, right? That we bring in. Then we have upatthana. Upatthana, which is essentially the sense of mindfulness, right? Mindfulness, which is the inclination, the excessive concentration that we want to cultivate and develop. So really anything that takes us away from a balanced meditation. Do you understand? Right? Then Ñāna, right? Which is the knowledge, thought-based knowledge. It is also referred to in Pali, it's called Jintayana. Jinta, Jinta, Ñāna. Jintayana. This is thought-based. Because we study so much, because we know so much, this knowledge application is a real pitfall in our meditation or in our Vipassana. Because we apply. The more we apply, the more self is applied. The more self is applied. Right? The more self is applied. Hence, we do not apply, right? We have to allow the lotuses of Vipassana to bloom on its own, right? We simply lay the foundation, be the mud, be the waters that the lotuses can bloom, that the lotus can bloom in. We do not try to sort of push it in any way. Right? The stilling of the mind, the being within the present, the separation from all that is self. Upekkha, right? Which means the sense of not caring. Sometimes we take the word upekkha in a very selfish manner, right? Upekkha has nothing to do with a sense of not caring or indifference, right? This is not caring about what is unfolding, happening, right? This is tackled by a balance of samadhi and awareness, right? Then we have nikkanta. Nikkanta is the gratification. Now, when we come into a position of awareness with regards to, let's say, when the breath disappears. When the breath disappears, you're like, wow, the breath disappeared. The body disappears, the sensations disappears. You're like, wow, okay. That is nikkanta. That, wow, okay. That sense of satisfaction, gratification that we have. Now, don't be afraid. Initially, you will experience these things, especially the first time. You will experience, it is very difficult to not say wow, because it truly is a beautiful experience and an experience that you might not have had before. But then slowly, when you're more aware of it, you can then sort of be more dhammic with that interaction, be more vipassana friendly with that interaction, with that experience that arises, So those are the vipassana upakleshas, right? Vipassana upakleshas. And that is how we sort of manure ourselves in a way away from the upakleshas and wholly based upon present moment awareness with the direct experience of noticing the arising, the processing, the passing away of the breath or any other object that we have taken for our vipassana, of sensations, of perceptions, of mental objects, of the 3 timelines, past, present, future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante. Yes, Bhante. Understand. Yes.
Understood?
Yes, Bhante.
Wonderful, right? So that is Sammasana Ñāna. Okay?
Yes.
Anyone else? Anyone else? All right then. So that is Sammasana Ñāna. We will continue with the other Ñāna, with the next Ñāna next week, right? And I hope you all the very best. Today at 6 o'clock, we are sort of having a Dhamma talk, which is sponsored by the Leela Sena family, headed by Noeline. And so I will see you at 6 o'clock. And take care and have a lovely rest of the day, everyone. Teran Samma.
Teran Samma, Bhante.
Teran.